The hot sun beat down on Sergeant Sarah Chen as she walked her patrol route around the military base on New Darwin. The red dust of the frontier world clung to her boots, and sweat trickled down her neck, despite her uniform's cooling system. It was another ordinary day, defending humanity's outer colonies, until her communicator buzzed with an urgent message from Earth. Sergeant Chen, a stiff-looking lawyer, appeared on her wrist display. "I regret to inform you of your Uncle James Chen's passing." Sarah stopped walking. Uncle James. She hadn't heard from him in years, not since he'd made his fortune trading with alien species in the Outer Rim. She barely remembered him from childhood, just a loud laugh and expensive gifts on birthdays before he disappeared into the stars. As his only living relative, the lawyer continued, "You have inherited his most precious possession. Transportation has been arranged to deliver it to you within the hour." Before Sarah could ask questions, the lawyer disappeared. She stood there in the alien sunlight, trying to process the news. Her uncle was dead, and he'd left her something. What could be so precious that it needed immediate delivery to a military base on the edge of human space? She got her answer exactly 57 minutes later. The small transport ship landed near her patrol zone, kicking up clouds of red dust. Sarah approached cautiously, one hand on her weapon as protocol demanded. The ship's ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss. What emerged made her stop in her tracks. An alien female walked down the ramp, moving with an otherworldly grace. Her skin had a subtle blue tinge that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Delicate patterns of bioluminescence pulsed along her arms and neck, creating hypnotic designs. She was tall and slender, with large eyes that shifted color like oil on water. A Lissari, one of the empathic species from the inner core worlds. But it was the collar around the alien's neck that made Sarah's stomach turn. "Property transfer papers, Sergeant." The transport pilot held out a tablet. "Just need your thumbprint to accept delivery of the Lissari female designated Araya. Full ownership and rights transfer, as specified in your uncle's will." Sarah stared at the tablet, then at the Lissari woman, Araya, who kept her eyes downcast. The patterns of light under her skin had dimmed to almost nothing. "This is a mistake," Sarah said. "I'm a soldier, not a slave owner." The word tasted bitter in her mouth. Her own great-grandmother had escaped from an automated labor camp in Asia. The Chen family had fled to the stars, carrying stories of chains and the hunger for freedom in their blood. The pilot shrugged. "Papers are all legal. Either accept the inheritance, or she becomes property of the state. Your uncle paid a lot to ensure she'd be protected. Lissari are valuable. Lots of beings would love to get their hands on an unbound empath." Araya's shoulders tensed at those words, though she didn't look up. Sarah felt sick. Accept ownership of a thinking, feeling being. But if she refused, she'd seen how other species treated unprotected Lissari. Their empathic abilities made them prized possessions for anyone wanting an edge in business or politics, at least under military jurisdiction. Her hand shook slightly as she pressed her thumb to the tablet. The pilot nodded and turned away. "She's all yours. Instruction manual is included in the data package." Sarah watched the transport take off, leaving her alone with her uncle's precious possession. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Finally, Araya spoke in perfect, softly accented English. "How may I serve you, Master?" Sarah looked at the collar, at the elegant alien woman wearing it, and at the red dust of New Darwin swirling around their feet. She thought of her great-grandmother's stories, of chains and stars, and the price of freedom. "First," she said, "let's see about getting that collar off." 3 days after inheriting Araya, Sarah still couldn't get the collar off. The alien device resisted every tool in the base's maintenance shop, and Araya's quiet insistence that it was meant to be permanent only made Sarah more determined to remove it. "You don't have to stand in the corner," Sarah said, looking up from her computer, where she'd been researching Lissari physiology. Araya hadn't moved from her spot for 2 hours. "Please, sit down. Araya's bioluminescent patterns flickered with confusion. "Have I displeased you, Master?" "Sarah. My name is Sarah." She rubbed her temples. "And no, you haven't displeased me. I want you to be comfortable." "I don't understand." Araya's color-shifting eyes studied Sarah carefully. "The manual states that proper posture and positioning maintains discipline." Sarah slammed her computer shut. "Forget the manual. You're not a piece of furniture. You're a person." For the first time, Araya's perfect composure cracked. Previous masters punished such thoughts. "I'm not your master," Sarah started, but alarms suddenly blared throughout the base. Red emergency lights flashed as the AI's voice echoed through the corridors. "Alert! Unknown aircraft approaching. All personnel to battle stations." Sarah grabbed her rifle and combat gear. "Stay here," she told Araya. "Lock the door and don't open it for anyone but me." But Araya's patterns were pulsing rapidly, her eyes wide. "Danger," she whispered. "I sense hatred, violence, not from above. Here, inside." Sarah froze. "What do you mean?" "My people feel emotions, Master Sarah. Someone inside your base burns with desire to kill. They'd wait to strike when your defenses focus upward." Sarah keyed her comm. "Command, this is Surgeon Chen. Possible infiltrator on base. Request immediate." An explosion rocked the building. Smoke poured through the ventilation system as emergency sirens wailed. Through the chaos, Sarah heard the distinctive sound of Drachnid plasma rifles. The savage reptilians had somehow breached the base's inner perimeter. "Come on." Sarah grabbed Araya's arm. "We need to move." They ran through smoke-filled corridors as sounds of battle echoed around them. Sarah's combat training kicked in as she guided them toward the secure bunkers. But at an intersection, Araya suddenly pulled her to a stop. "Wait." The Lissari's patterns flashed urgently. "The killer's emotions. They're ahead, waiting." Sarah raised her rifle just as a shape detached from the shadows. A Drachnid assassin in active camouflage had been lying in ambush. Sarah fired twice, dropping the alien before it could raise its weapon. Without Araya's warning, they would have walked right into the trap. They reached the bunker where other soldiers were regrouping. Sarah's commander listened intently to her report about the infiltrator. "Good work, Sergeant," he said. "But how did you know about the ambush?" Sarah glanced at Araya, who stood quietly behind her. "Let's just say I had good intelligence, sir." Later, after the attack was repelled and casualties were counted, Sarah found Araya trying to return to her corner stance. "You saved my life," Sarah said. "Probably saved a lot of lives." "Why?" Araya's patterns shifted in what Sarah was learning to recognize as confusion. "The manual says to protect Master's property at all costs." "No." Sarah stepped closer. "The real reason." For a long moment, Araya was silent. Then, so quietly Sarah almost missed it. "Because you tried to remove my collar. Because you see me as a person." Sarah reached out slowly and touched one of the glowing patterns on Araya's arm. The light followed her finger like ripples in water. "Tomorrow," she said, "we try again with that collar. And then we figure out how to keep you safe without it, together." Araya's patterns brightened just slightly. "Together," she repeated, as if testing how the word felt in her mouth. "Yes, Sarah." The underground bunker was dimly lit and smelled of machine oil. Sarah watched as Dr. Emily Torres, the base's chief medical officer, examined the collar around Araya's neck. "I've never seen technology like this," Dr. Torres said, putting down her scanner. "It's not just a restraint. It's connected to her nervous system. Removing it wrong could kill her." Sarah's fists clenched. 2 weeks had passed since the Drachnid attack, and she was no closer to freeing Araya. "There has to be a way." "There is." A new voice spoke from the shadows. A tall woman in civilian clothes stepped forward, showing a hidden military ID. "Captain Lisa Wright, Human Intelligence Division. We've been watching you." Surgeon Chen. Sarah moved protectively in front of Araya, watching me. We track all Lissari arrivals in human space. Captain Wright's eyes were hard. Most end up in private collections or corporate holdings. But you're different. You've been trying to free her. Of course I have, Sarah said. Slavery is wrong. Wright smiled slightly. Good answer. That's why I'm here. We run an underground network, helping enslaved beings escape, finding them safe homes. Humanity hasn't forgotten its own history with slavery. Araya's patterns pulsed with hope, but Sarah stayed cautious. Why tell us this? Because we need your help. Wright activated a hologram showing Sarah's uncle. James Chen wasn't just a merchant. He worked with us, gathering intelligence on slave traders. His death wasn't an accident. Sarah felt cold. What happened? He discovered something big. A criminal syndicate called the Shadow Market is collecting Lissari with unusual abilities. Araya was supposed to be their next acquisition, but your uncle changed his will at the last minute to protect her. Araya spoke softly. The previous master, James, he found out why they wanted me. All eyes turned to her. Her pattern swirled with fear and memory. Most Lissari can sense emotions within short range, she explained. But I can do more. I can connect, share thoughts, memories. The Shadow Market wants to use abilities like mine to steal secrets, manipulate leaders. That's why they can't find her, Wright said. If the Shadow Market gets hold of Araya, they could blackmail half the Galactic Senate. Sarah remembered how Araya had sensed the Drachnid infiltrator. How can we keep her safe? That's the interesting part. Wright smiled. Humans are naturally resistant to Lissari mental abilities. Something about our neural patterns. We're the perfect protection for their people. There's a safe house network, run by human veterans. Suddenly, Araya's patterns flashed bright with alarm. Someone's coming. They feel wrong, empty. Wright's hand went to her weapon. Assassin. They must have followed me. The bunker door exploded inward. Through the smoke, a figure in black armor rolled in, raising a weapon. Sarah dove for her rifle as Wright opened fire. The assassin moved with terrifying speed, dodging bullets like they were standing still. But they hadn't counted on Araya. The Lissari's patterns blazed like a star as she reached out mentally. The assassin stumbled, overwhelmed by projected emotions. Sarah's shot caught them in the chest, and they dropped. Neural dampeners, Wright said, checking the fallen assassin. Shadow Market tech. They'll keep coming. Sarah looked at Araya, who swayed with exhaustion from the mental attack. The Lissari met her eyes. I trust you, Araya said simply. Sarah turned to Wright. Tell us everything about this underground railroad of yours. And then we're going to find out who killed my uncle. Wright nodded approvingly. Welcome to the Resistance, Surgeon Chen. Hope you're ready for a real war. Behind them, Araya's patterns rippled with something new. Not fear or submission, but determination. The same determination Sarah felt growing in her own heart. Araya raised the training pistol, her hands shaking slightly. They were in an abandoned warehouse that the Underground Railroad used for training. 3 weeks had passed since the assassin's attack, and Sarah had insisted on teaching Araya self-defense. I cannot. Araya lowered the weapon. My people, we were not made for violence. Made? Sarah stepped closer. What do you mean, made? Araya's patterns dimmed to a soft blue. It is a shameful history. Long ago, the Lissari were a powerful race. We were masters of genetic science, able to reshape life itself. But our leaders became obsessed with perfection. She touched her collar, her eyes distant with ancestral memory. They decided to make our species perfect servants, gentle, obedient, physically appealing to most races. They wrote it into our very genes. Sarah felt sick. Your own people did this. The modifications worked too well. We couldn't fight back when other species realized what we'd become. That's why these collars control us so easily. They're connected to the servitude genes. Sarah grabbed Araya's shoulders gently. Listen to me. No one is born to be a slave. Those genes might affect your body, but they don't control your mind or your soul. Araya's patterns flickered with confusion. Soul. The part of you that wants to be free. The part that helped me fight the assassin. Sarah picked up the pistol. Now try again. This time, Araya's shot hit the target center. Her patterns pulsed with surprise and pride. Later, as they rested, Araya watched Sarah clean the weapons. I sense something different in your mind, she said hesitantly. When we train together, your thoughts feel stronger. Sarah looked up. What do you mean? Humans are usually difficult to read. Your neural patterns resist our abilities. But with you, Araya's patterns swirled with concentration. It's like there's a door opening. Sarah remembered the battle with the assassin, how clearly she had felt Araya's warning. Can you teach me to understand these abilities better? Araya's eyes widened. That would be forbidden. The manual says. Forget the manual, Sarah said, a phrase she found herself repeating often. We're breaking all the rules anyway. For a long moment, Araya was silent. Then she reached out, her patterns glowing brighter. Take my hands. Close your eyes. Sarah did as instructed. Suddenly, she felt it. A warm presence at the edge of her mind, like sunlight through clouds. Your resistance is natural. Araya's voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. But you can learn to lower it, like opening a window. Sarah concentrated. The warmth grew stronger. She could feel Araya's emotions, hope mixed with fear, trust battling with generations of programmed subservience. The connection broke as alarms blared from Sarah's communicator. Captain Wright's voice crackled through. Chen, we got trouble. Our safe house in the capital was just raided. The shadow market is getting bolder. Sarah helped Araya up. We need to move. They're getting closer. Wait. Araya's patterns pulsed with determination. Teach me more fighting first. I want to be able to protect you too. Sarah smiled, feeling a fierce pride. The Lissari genes might have been designed for servitude, but Araya's spirit was growing stronger every day. All right, she said, setting up more targets. Let's see what else those perfect servants can do. Above them, New Darwin's red sun was setting, painting the warehouse in shades of fire. Like Araya's patterns, it seemed to promise both danger and hope in the days ahead. Captain Wright spread the holographic maps across the table in the Underground Railroad's secret base. This is it, she said, pointing to a heavily fortified building. The Shadow Market's main research facility. And this is what your uncle died trying to find. Sarah studied the blueprints while Araya stood close beside her, patterns glowing softly in the dim light. 2 months of training had changed them both. Araya now moved with a fighter's awareness, while Sarah had learned to open her mind to their growing mental connection. What's so important about this place? Sarah asked. They're keeping something called the Genesis Key, Wright explained. According to your uncle's last message, it's the original genetic template of the Lissari people, from before they were modified to be servants. Araya's patterns flashed with shock. The pure code. But it was destroyed centuries ago. The Shadow Market found it. They'd been using it to study how to control Lissari abilities. Wright's face hardened, and they're getting close to cracking it. Sarah felt Araya's fear through their mental link. If they succeed, they could make the Lissari even more enslaved than they already are. Or worse, they could modify other species the same way. Wright stood up. We have to steal it. Planning the heist took hours. The facility had advanced security, armed guards, and neural dampeners to prevent Lissari from using their abilities inside. But it also had one weakness. They're not expecting humans, Sarah said, studying the guard rotations. They rely too much on their anti-Lissari defenses. Araya touched Sarah's arm, sending a gentle wave of concern through their link. It's too dangerous. The Shadow Market has to be stopped, Sarah finished. We can do this. Together. The next night, Sarah found herself crawling through maintenance tunnels under the facility, with Araya following close behind. Their mental link hummed with shared focus and determination. "Guards ahead," Araya whispered, her patterns dimmed to near darkness. Two of them. Their emotions feel strange. Sarah peered around the corner. The guards wore black armor like the assassin who'd attacked them. Neural dampeners must affect your reading. Wait. Araya's hand gripped Sarah's shoulder. Something's wrong. Their minds are too quiet, even for dampeners. Sarah was about to respond when one guard turned, revealing a face that was more machine than organic. "They're cyborgs," she breathed. "That's why you can't read them properly." They waited until the cyborg guards passed, then moved quickly to the secured laboratory section. Sarah's military override codes, provided by Wright, got them through the first set of doors. But the inner chamber, where the Genesis key was kept, had stronger security. "Retinal scan required," the computer announced. Sarah cursed softly. "We didn't plan for this." But Araya stepped forward, her patterns suddenly bright. "I recognize this system. It's Lissari technology, stolen and modified." She placed her hand on the scanner. The old masters built in secret ways to bypass their own security. Her patterns pulsed with intense light. The scanner sparked and the door slid open. Inside, floating in a stasis field, was a small crystal cylinder filled with swirling blue light, the genetic template of an entire species. "Hurry," Sarah said, reaching for the cylinder. Before, alarm screamed to life. A cold voice echoed through the facility. "Intruder alert. Security breach in Vault 7. Sarah grabbed the Genesis key as heavy footsteps thundered toward them. She looked at Araya, whose patterns now blazed with fierce light. "Run," the Lissari asked. Sarah grinned. "Run." Above them, doors were slamming shut and cyborg guards were mobilizing. But Sarah had the Genesis key, Araya had her freedom. And together they had a chance to change history. The chase was on. Alarms howled through the Shadow Market facility as Sarah and Araya ran through the metal corridors. The Genesis key felt warm in Sarah's pocket, its blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. Behind them, heavy footsteps of cyborg guards echoed off the walls. Left. Araya's patterns flashed warning. "They're coming from the right." They turned left, but found themselves facing a sealed blast door. Sarah pulled out her military decoder, fingers flying over the keys. "Sarah," Araya's voice was tight with fear. "They're close. Too close." The blast door finally opened with a hiss, but as they ran through, Sarah heard a familiar voice that made her blood freeze. "Hello, Sergeant Chen." Lieutenant Parker, Sarah's second-in-command at the military base, stepped out of the shadows. He held a Shadow Market neural disruptor. "Thank you for making our job so much easier." Sarah's mind raced. "Parker, you're working for them." "For years." He smiled coldly. "Who do you think told them about your uncle's discovery? About Araya's special abilities?" Araya's patterns dimmed with shock and betrayal. Sarah could feel her friend's pain through their mental link. "The Shadow Market pays well," Parker continued. "Now, hand over the key." "Never." Sarah raised her weapon, but Parker was faster. The neural disruptor fired, sending waves of energy that should have knocked them both unconscious. But something strange happened. Instead of falling, Sarah felt Araya's mind merge completely with hers. Their mental link, strengthened by months of practice, exploded into full connection. Suddenly, Sarah could see through Araya's eyes, feel the flow of her abilities. Araya, in turn, gained access to Sarah's combat training and tactical knowledge. Moving as one being, they dodged Parker's second shot. Sarah's body flowed with impossible grace, while Araya's patterns blazed like a supernova. Together, they disarmed Parker with a combination of physical skill and psychic force. "Impossible," Parker gasped as they pinned him down. "The disruptor should have stopped a Lissari," Sarah finished. "But I'm human. And together, we're something else entirely." More cyborg guards were coming. Sarah could feel them through Araya's senses, their half-machine minds like cold spots in the mental landscape. We need to move. Sarah/Araya thought/spoke together. The line between them had blurred completely. They ran for the exit, their shared consciousness making them impossibly fast and coordinated. Guards fell before their combined might. Sarah's combat skills enhanced by Araya's mental abilities, Araya's powers focused through Sarah's trained mind. They were almost at the extraction point where Captain Wright waited when the facility's main defense system activated. Electric arcs filled the corridor, and something dark and cold clawed at their merged minds. Too much. Araya's thoughts were growing weak. The connection, burning. Sarah felt it too. Their unprecedented mental link was putting terrible strain on both their brains. But they needed the connection for just a few more seconds. With their last combined strength, they broke through the final door. Wright's ship was waiting, engines hot. They stumbled aboard just as their mental connection shattered. Sarah caught Araya as she collapsed, patterns completely dark. No, 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 stay with me. Get us out of here. Wright shouted to her pilot as shadow market forces opened fire on the ship. They blasted away from the facility, breaking atmosphere in seconds. Sarah held Araya's unconscious form, tears falling onto the Lissari's silent face. The Genesis key glowed in her pocket, saved but at what cost? Please, she whispered. I can't lose you too. But Araya's patterns remained dark, and her mind, so recently entwined with Sarah's, was terrifyingly quiet. The medical bay of the Underground Railroad's secret base was quiet except for the soft beeping of monitors. Araya lay motionless on the bed, her patterns still dark after 3 days. Sarah hadn't left her side, the Genesis key clutched in her hands like a lifeline. Her brain activity is stable, Dr. Torres said, checking the readings. But the mental link you described, it shouldn't have been possible. Lissari can share emotions, even surface thoughts, but a complete merger. It happened. Sarah's voice was hoarse. We were one person. We could do things neither of us could do alone. Captain Wright entered, her face grim. The shadow market is moving. They've activated sleeper agents in every major human colony. Parker wasn't the only traitor. Sarah barely heard her. She was focused on the key in her hands, its blue light seeming to respond to her touch. This contains the original Lissari genetic code, she said slowly, before they were made into servants. Sarah, Wright's voice held a warning. Whatever you're thinking. Their leaders wrote servitude into their genes, Sarah continued. What if we could undo it? Not just for Araya, but for all of them. Dr. Torres shook her head. The genetic modifications are too complex. It would take massive computing power to decode and reverse them, more than any computer we have. Sarah looked at Araya's still form, remembering how it felt when their minds joined. What about human brains? What? Humans resist Lissari mental powers. Sarah stood up, energy flowing back into her voice. But Araya and I broke through that resistance. What if that's not a weakness, but a strength? What if human minds are the perfect processors for Lissari genetic code? Wright caught on first. You want to link human volunteers with Lissari partners. Use their combined mental power to decode the Genesis key. More than that, Sarah touched Araya's hand. The shadow market is using modified humans, cyborgs, to control the Lissari. We'll use willing human partners to free them. It's insane, Dr. Torres protested. The strain nearly killed you both. Because we weren't ready. Because we didn't understand. Sarah's eyes were bright with purpose. But now we know it's possible. We can train for it, prepare properly. Wright was already on her communicator. I know some veterans who'd volunteer. People who've helped the Underground Railroad before. But we'd need more. Lots more. Then we'll find them, Sarah said. Every human who believes in freedom. Every soldier who remembers Earth's history of slavery. We'll build an army of liberators. Dr. Torres studied her medical readings. The Lissari genetic structure. It's like a lock. And maybe human neural patterns are the key. But Sarah, even if this works, the shadow market will fight us. Good. Sarah stood straighter, a soldier again. They turned humans against their own kind, made them into cyborg puppets. Time to show them what free humans and free Lissari can do together. A soft glow caught their attention. Araya's patterns were flickering weakly, responding to Sarah's fierce emotions even in unconsciousness. The Genesis key pulsed in sync with the light. "Get me everything you can find about Lissari genetics," Sarah told Dr. Torres. "And right, we need secure communications with every human colony. It's time to call in every favor, every contact." She looked down at Araya, whose patterns were growing slightly stronger. "You wanted to make your people perfect servants," she whispered to the long-dead Lissari leaders. "Well, humans don't want servants. We want allies, partners, friends." The Genesis key flared bright blue, as if in answer to her words. The revolution was about to begin. 1 month later, the Underground Railroad's base buzzed with activity. Hundreds of human volunteers worked with rescued Lissari, practicing the mental linking techniques that Sarah and Araya had discovered by accident. In the center of it all, Araya stood beside Sarah's chair, her patterns glowing strong and bright. "The network is ready," Captain Wright announced, looking at the holographic display showing thousands of connected points across human space. Over 10,000 pairs of humans and Lissari, all trained and linked. "The shadow market is moving too," Dr. Torres added. "Their cyborg forces are gathering. They know what we're planning." Sarah squeezed Araya's hand. Since recovering from their intense mental merger, their connection had grown even stronger. "Are you ready?" Araya's pattern swirled with determination. "Yes. The Genesis key has shown me how deep the changes go in our genetic code. But together, we can break them." Sarah turned to the communications array. "All pairs, prepare for full link." Across human space, thousands of humans and Lissari joined minds. Unlike the desperate merger that had nearly killed Sarah and Araya, these links were careful, controlled, and strong. Each human's natural mental resistance combined with each Lissari's psychic abilities, creating something entirely new. Sarah held up the Genesis key, its blue light pulsing faster. Now, she and Araya linked fully, their combined consciousness reaching out to the vast network of paired minds. Through their connection flowed the pure genetic code from the key, spreading to every linked pair. The sensation was incredible. Sarah could feel thousands of minds working together, human and Lissari thoughts intertwined. They were processing the genetic code, finding the artificial changes made so long ago, and understanding how to undo them. Suddenly, alarms blared. Shadow market ships dropping out of hyperspace. Wright shouted, "They're attacking every major human colony." Through the mental network, Sarah and Araya could feel the attacks. Cyborg troops were assaulting locations where linked pairs worked. But the shadow market had made a mistake. They didn't understand what the linking had created. When their cyborg soldiers attacked one location, every linked pair could respond. Human tactical knowledge flowed through Lissari mental channels. Lissari empathic abilities were focused through human minds. The defenders moved with impossible coordination, each pair fighting as one while connected to the larger network. "The genetic code," Dr. Torres called out, watching their screens. "It's working. The modifications are breaking down." Sarah felt it through her link with Araya, invisible change shattering, not just in her friend, but in every Lissari connected to the network. Generations of engineered servitude dissolving under the combined power of human and Lissari minds. The shadow market forces fell back in confusion as their neural dampeners and control devices stopped working. The freed Lissari were no longer bound by their genetic programming to obey. "They're retreating." Wright's voice was triumphant. Reports coming in from all colonies, shadow market forces in full withdrawal. But Sarah and Araya were focused on something else. Through their connection, they felt a final piece of code unraveling. Araya's collar and every other control collar across human space clicked open and fell away. The mental network hummed with joy and disbelief. For the first time in centuries, the Lizari were truly free. Sarah opened her eyes to find Araya glowing with colors she had never seen before, patterns that had been locked away by genetic chains for generations. "We did it," Araya whispered, touching her bare neck where the collar had been. "We're free." "No," Sarah stood, pulling her friend into a hug. "You freed yourselves. Humans just helped you remember how." Around them, the Genesis Key's light was fading. It had served its purpose, returning to the Lizari what their ancestors had taken away. The war wasn't over. The shadow market would return, but they would face something unprecedented. Humans and Lizari fighting side by side. Neither master nor slave, but equals at last. 1 year later, Sarah stood at attention in her dress uniform as the new human Lizari Defense Force headquarters was officially opened on New Darwin. The red dust that had once clung to her boots was now covered by gardens of earth plants and Lizari crystal flowers that glowed in the sunlight. The shadow market's influence in the Galactic Senate has been exposed. Captain Wright, now Admiral Wright, addressed the gathered crowd. Their leadership faces trial for crimes against sentient beings. But more importantly, their actions led to something they never expected: the strongest alliance in galactic history. Sarah smiled as Araya took the podium next, her patterns shifting in the complex language that free Lizari could now display. She wore the same uniform as Sarah, with the rank of commander. 1 year ago, I was property, Araya's voice carried clearly across the crowd. Today, I command a joint fleet of human and Lizari ships. But our greatest victory wasn't in space, it was in understanding each other. Sarah thought back to the months after the liberation. The shadow market had tried to rally other species against the human-Lizari alliance, warning that their combined abilities made them too powerful. Instead, they had inspired others. Freed from genetic servitude, the Lizari had used their emotional insights to help heal ancient conflicts. Human resistance to mental influence had proved valuable in diplomatic missions, making them perfect mediators. The mental linking technology that freed us, Araya continued, is now used to share knowledge, not just between humans and Lizari, but with any species willing to learn. The age of masters and slaves is ending. The age of understanding has begun. After the ceremony, Sarah found Araya in their shared office. The Lizari commander was looking at an old photograph of Sarah's Uncle James. "He would be proud," Araya said softly. "He died trying to free one Lizari. Instead, he helped free us all. He helped us find each other," Sarah corrected, touching Araya's shoulder. Their mental link, now refined and controlled, hummed with shared affection. "Everything else, we did together." A chime from their computer interrupted the moment. Speaking of doing things together, Araya's patterns sparkled with amusement. "The new class of cadets is waiting." They walked to the training grounds where 30 young recruits stood at attention. Half human, half Lizari. All of them volunteers for the new linked pair program. "Welcome to the Defense Force," Sarah addressed them. "You're here because you believe in something bigger than yourselves." A year ago, humans and Lizari proved that the strongest bonds aren't forced. They're chosen. "Your training will be difficult," Araya added. "You'll learn to link minds while keeping your individual strength, to fight as one while thinking as two, to trust completely while remaining yourself." A young Lizari cadet raised her hand, patterns showing nervousness. "Commander Araya, is it true you were once a slave?" Araya's patterns shifted to colors of pride and hope. "I was. Now I'm free, serving beside my best friend and partner." She smiled at Sarah. "And nothing in the galaxy can chain us again." Later, watching the sunset paint New Darwin's sky in shades of red and gold, Sarah thought about the strange path that had led here. An inheritance she hadn't wanted, a friendship that had changed history, a revolution born from trust and choice. Thinking deep thoughts, Araya joined her at the window, her patterns reflecting the sunset colors. Wondering what's next, Sarah replied, "The galaxy's changing. More species are interested in the linking program. The shadow market still has hidden bases to find." Araya's patterns swirled with joy and determination. "Then we'll face it together. Not as master and slave, but as equals, as friends, as family," Sarah corrected softly. Above them, the stars were coming out, each one a potential adventure, a new world to explore. But whatever challenges waited up there, they would face them side by side, proving that the strongest bonds in the universe were the ones freely chosen.